All right, so this is video 4 on the mini course, how to use Claude Cowork for sales. Now in video 3, we talked about how to use Claude Cowork to automate your prospecting so you can start reaching out to more companies and start landing discovery meetings. In video 4, we're gonna dive into, now that you've landed that first discovery call, how can you use Claude Cowork to prepare for that discovery meeting so you maximize the time you have with every single prospect. So coming out of today's video, you'll have a clear understanding of how you can use Claude to not only prepare for sales meetings, but also after the sales meeting is done, how you can use Claude to do all the follow-up activities. Now, before we dive into today's video, quick intro to me. My name is Sanjay. I'm the founder of AccuSales. We're a go-to-market engineering firm helping sales teams leverage AI to be able to generate more pipeline and then close more deals. So if you like this kind of content on how you can use AI to really scale sales at your company, follow me here on YouTube. All right, so we're back in Claude Cowork. Now, whenever I'm preparing for a discovery call, there's a couple key data points I always want to make sure I have. The first thing that I want to build is I want to build an our understanding slide, because it's really hard to ask discovery questions on a discovery call when a prospect doesn't feel like you understand their business and what they're trying to do. So what I like to do is I like to know information about the person I'm meeting, what does their business do, and then what is their current go-to-market motion, so I can form an opinion on why they would want to use my service. So what we should do is, from video 3, we did a ton of research on Klein and AuthZ. So let's pretend like we got a meeting with Klein, with Saud. And in our previous lesson, we talked about how the outbound full scale generated this extremely detailed HTML report, which has a ton of context on the business and their go-to-market motion. So 2 of the 3 bullet points we're already able to capture in the prospecting itself. Now, if you're doing more scaled outreach where you're not going this in-depth into each individual account, you might want to run a skill like this just so you get this kind of content. But it's really important that we understand the business and exactly what pains, needs, or goals that our product or service will solve for that business. Now, the one thing that is missing is for us to do research on the person we're actually meeting. So what I like to do is copy the name of the person. So I can say, I just landed a meeting with Klein. I'm meeting this person. Can you research blogs, podcasts, and videos on how he's thinking about Klein's growth and GTM strategy. Now, the reason this is important is I obviously am trying to position go-to-market, consulting services, go-to-market engineering services. So I'm more interested in the story behind Klein and how they're planning on growing and their strategy. And then actually, if we go back to this chat, there was the link to his LinkedIn, I believe. Let's see. Oh, here it is. So we can copy the LinkedIn link here that we got from Clay. And then we can say, here is his LinkedIn. Also say use computer use to research him. Now, computer use is a tool where Claude gets to spin up its own browser and be able to use a computer like we would. So I'm going to spin this and kick this off so that we can start researching and get that third data point. Now, the reason we want to do this is before we give Claude the ability to create any sort of presentations or slides, we want to consolidate and get all the information first before we start beautifying it and putting it on a slide and making it look pretty. So first we want to do the information aggregation, and then we'll start putting it on a slide. So how do you want to research this? Let's do meeting research brief. Okay, so I'm going to let this run, and then let's see what Claude outputs. Okay, so Claude just finished working, and it gave us a really in-depth meeting brief specifically for the CEO of Klein. It talks about who he is, what Klein does, which is a little bit more redundant since we already have that information, and then his core go-to-market thesis. And then at the very bottom, it actually shows all the different sources that it aggregated in order to generate this brief. So there's some interesting things here, like some smart questions to ask him on how he's sourcing enterprise deals, who the economic buyers are, and some landmines to also avoid. This is probably what my follow-up question would have been to Claude anyways, like give me some discovery questions. So let's actually try this. Give me 5 discovery questions on the 3 whys and to qualify and quantify pains, needs, and goals. So the 3 whys are essentially why anything, why they would want to buy something, or like what are they trying to solve for? Why us? So why would they want to use your product or service? And then why now? Like obviously they're in business. Why would they want to make a change now? So those 3 whys, there's ways to massage the questions. And then we want to figure out if we can qualify and quantify the pain associated with those 3 whys, specifically on the why anything and the why now. So I'm going to let this run and see if we can get, okay, nice. It's actually generating it pretty quickly. So here's some discovery questions as well that Claude is giving us that we could ask and maybe even keep in the speaker's notes as we think about building out our first call deck. Yes. Add these to the brief. Now the reason I want to do this is I want Claude to just have everything on one like artifact so that we can upload this artifact in our next portion to actually build out the slide deck. So what we've done so far is we have information on the person that we're going to meet with, like a very solid brief. And then from last video, running the outbound full skill, we generated that HTML report on the business and their go-to-market strategy. So we have a clear understanding of who we're meeting, what the business does, and then what the business does in order to generate revenue so that we can form a strong opinion on why they should buy from us. So I'm going to let this update the brief, and then we'll dive into Claude Design, which is kind of the fundamental technology that I'm using to actually generate these updated slide decks for my first call meetings. All right, so Claude just updated the meeting brief with the 5 discovery questions. Now the person brief and the company brief are also in the exact same folder that we created at the start of this course for tracking all the assets that Claude creates for us. Next, what we're going to do is go into Claude Design, which is right here, which is going to aggregate that information and beautify it and be able to generate a really high quality first call deck. So let's click into Claude Design, and then I'm going to shift my screen over there so we can start looking at how. But you click this button and then it's going to pop up a different window to start actually generating these slides. All right, so now we're in Claude Design. Claude Design is a relatively new feature, but it's been my home base for actually generating these first call decks. So a couple things I recommend doing when you first start using Claude Design. If you come down here to Design Systems, what you can do is you can give Claude access to all your logos, any sort of assets that you might have as a company, and it'll actually design a very thorough design system so that you can have a higher quality and more consistent output with whatever slides or design assets that you're creating using Claude Design. So a couple things I uploaded here were the AccuSales blue and black like logos, color palettes, and then I also uploaded the 2 logos both for light and dark backgrounds, and I gave it some context on the company. And then Claude actually went through this process and designed this really thorough design document that you can reference in future conversations and work that you do in Claude Design. So if we go back to projects, up here, you can choose your design system. So I'm going to use the AccuSales design system. From here, what I would recommend doing next is go to Files, Attach Folder, and then use the folder that you've been using as your working folder so that whenever Claude does upload or output any slides, it gets saved in that folder. So make sure you're mounting the proper folder. And then from here, what I like to do is come in and then hit templates. And since we're building slides, I want to give Claude a few reference slides that you can use in order to generate the highest quality output from the information that we've aggregated from all the research. So we can go to browse, and then I'm going to go pick a couple example slide decks. So this is some slides that I created in the past through Canva that I'm going to let Claude reference, and then I'm going to give it another one for a conversation that I had in the past. So those are some examples. This is called few shot prompting. We're giving Claude a couple examples of what a good slide deck looks like. And so what I'm going to do next, finally, is we're going to go back in here. We're going to go to the slide deck, the folder that we were in, and then we're going to also attach both of the files that we generated through our research, both on the person as well as on the company. So the task I'm going to give to Claude is, I'm going to put this, I'm going to say, I'm preparing for a meeting with Klein and their CEO. I've attached 2 assets to this. One is a company brief on the background of the company and their go-to-market strategy. The second asset is a meeting brief on how their CEO is thinking about their GTM strategy. So I want to make sure Claude is referencing the right files and using it for the right task. So use this information to create our understanding slide for a discovery call. I've attached 2 PDFs that show examples of an Our Understanding slide. And the information to include. Okay, so before we send this off, let's make sure we have the right information. So we've got 2 example templates of slide decks. We've got the information from the meeting brief. We've got the HTML report on the company. We're working in the right folder. We have the design system, and then we're also using the highest tier model. So I'm gonna kick this off, and then sometimes Claude might have a few questions. 2 files could not be attached. Okay, which files could not be attached? There might be a couple of these that might. Okay, so it looks like it got the Klein documents attached, but it did not attach the PDF. So let's see what the issue there is. Let me see if I can just do it again, and if this will work. Maybe I'm just giving it way too much information at the same time. Oh, gotcha. It's way too large of a file. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, while this is working, I'm going to go back to Canva and actually pull a smaller version of that, where it's basically the slide deck is like 22 slides. So maybe it's a bit overkill to have that much information there. So what I'll do is I'll go to Canva and actually just consolidate it to the single slide that we need, so that it knows, so that the file is just smaller. So let me do that really quick while this is running, and then download this. Okay, cool. So I have a smaller slide that I can use. And let's see, where is it in my, okay, here it is. Now that should work. Here is an example of an Our Understanding slide. Information to include. Okay, here's some clarifying questions from Claude. The example PDF load. I'll reattach the example PDFs. What structure feels right for the slides? Application. Let's see. Start with the person and their responsibilities. Then current state, situation, this, and implication of not doing anything. Responsibilities. Okay, well, I tried. And then future state goals. Okay, how should I direct the framing? There it is, and then customer facing, shown live, and then however, use the AccuSales brand, but include the Klein logo in the presentation. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna answer those questions, and I'm also gonna ship this off as well. So the Claude has way more information on how to generate this. So this usually takes a couple minutes. So let's let Claude run for a bit and then see what it outputs. All right, so this is what Claude just gave us. It took about 3 minutes for this to go end to end. So it's relatively faster than I was expecting it. I think we gave it enough context for it to know directionally what to build. But it does have a couple things that I probably want to amend. Up here, it actually gives us some 2 notes on the Klein logo. So while this was running, I did go and get the logo for Klein. So let's just drop that in there and see what it looks like. Looks okay. You know, not super great. I wish it was a transparent logo, but I think that's more on me finding the right one. I'm not a big fan of this SR thing, and I don't really know why there's dates here. So we can actually come up to edits, and then I think we can actually just get rid of this, right? Okay, cool. And then we can get rid of this. Okay. Save edits. And then I want to get rid of this. Let's see. Actually, let me get rid of that. I'm going to take a screenshot so I know exactly what I need. Okay, so I'm going to say get rid of this SR icon. And then, yeah, we need to also get rid of this bottom part right here. I don't know why we're saying discovery call plus notes. So save this. And then here, I'm also going to move, oh god dang it, make this a little bit smaller. This is supposed to be a footer, not the main attraction. So let's try to make that small. Okay, cool. All right, that looks a little better. And okay, cool. And we also remove this. All right, this is actually a very strong our understanding slide. And then here you can also come and edit the speaker's notes. So when you do export this, there's speaker's notes here. What we can do next is we can come up here to share, export, and then when you go to export, we can actually export this as a Google Slide. So Google Slides is like a very common format that a lot of people are using for presenting slides. You can also just have this or even take a screenshot of this and then put it on a Google Slide as well. But we can download this, and this would actually be the slide that we would present to the customer or the prospect to be able to do discovery, understand what's important to them. So now that we have this, we are ready to walk into that first sales meeting with a strong understanding of why this company should buy from us, and use this slide as a tool for discovery to be able to ask questions to better formulate our opinion. And so I'm gonna hit cancel here. So what we're gonna do next is we're going to pretend that we had the discovery call, and how can we use the meeting transcript and the meeting recording to be able to update this slide with the information that we were able to gather through discovery. So what I'm going to do is, I actually shouldn't have exited out of that. I should have saved that to the folder that we've been working on. We're gonna go back to Claude and then go through a workflow of, now that we've had a discovery call, how can we use Claude to be able to do all the follow-up items that come with running a discovery meeting. All right, so now we're back in Claude Cowork. So the scenario here is we just presented our beautiful slide to the prospect. We had a great discovery conversation. We found out a ton of pains that we solved for. So the next thing that we're gonna work on is we're gonna take the transcript of that meeting recording, give it to Claude, as well as the Our Understanding slide that we created in Claude Design, and have it update the slides based on the new information that we actually gathered from the prospect. This is a very common workflow, which is kind of post-call updating the internal notes and updating the Our Understanding slide. And the reason we update the Our Understanding slide is that if we have a follow-up conversation or a demo, we can show the updated slide, tell the prospect like, hey, we were listening to that conversation that we just had, and then use that updated slide to do further discovery in case we didn't ask a question or missed some discovery questions in the first meeting. So this is why we want to continually use the transcripts to be able to update the slides, using Claude as a way to not have to go manually watch every single meeting that we have. So what I did is I downloaded the slide deck as a PowerPoint presentation. I put it in the working folder that we already have. And then here I also created a transcript. This is synthetic data that I generated on, if we did run a discovery call, here's a synthetic data of the transcript. It's a markdown file. What I do in actual real life practice is I use the Google Meet integrated recorder. So it creates a Google Doc every time I have a meeting, and then I download that Google Doc as a markdown file and I feed it into Claude. I recommend Markdown or HTML. I think Claude and these LLMs are just much, they're able to read Markdown files, and HTML is better because they have a lot of hierarchy in the information. So I recommend downloading as a Markdown. You can upload it as a file here. And I'm also going to give it the PowerPoint presentation from Claude Design. I'm going to give it the task of, I just had a sales meeting with Klein. I've attached the transcript and the Our Understanding. Use the transcript to update the Our Understanding slide. And then using the transcript, I want you to draft a follow-up email. The email will recap the meeting, what was discussed. Actually, let's not talk about that. And schedule next steps. Okay, so I'm gonna kick this off, and then the goal here is that Claude is gonna obviously review the transcript, figure out, based on the hypothesis that we walked in the discovery call, what is valid and what isn't. So it's gonna take out information and hopefully update it with the information that we captured, asking our great discovery questions. All right, let's take a look at what Claude gave us. So Claude went through this process, it looked at some of the key updates in the transcript, and it updated the slide based on those key updates. So it talked about drowning in inbound. It did update quite a few of the goals as well. And then here, the main thing that it didn't work on was the implication of not changing from status quo and how that would impact the goals. So pretty cool that it updated mainly this. All of this stuff is actually pretty similar except for this portion, which is about the team growing from 20 to 100. So in this process, this would actually take me 30 minutes pre-Claude, pre-LLM days, because I'd actually have to watch the recordings end to end to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I still watch a lot of my sales meetings just because I'm curious about the questions I'm asking. And there's certain nuances with tonality and things like that that you miss by just downloading a transcript. But this does a lot of the admin work and automates a lot of the admin work. So in about a minute and a half or so, we were able to update our understanding slide with the transcript of the meeting. Now let's take a look at this follow-up email. For some reason it gave it, I guess I didn't specify the output, so it gave us a markdown file. And then it gives us a extremely long email. I would probably cut about 60% of this. Yeah, that's an extremely verbose email. But what I'm gonna say is, can you rewrite the email to be 200 words long and push as a draft in my Gmail inbox? Don't have the contact information loaded. Subject line is IQ sales follow-up. So what I usually like to do is, if it gives me a first draft email that I'm not super sold on, I'll just have it push it to the Gmail and then I'll do the final edits before sending out. And this is just a personal touch. Whenever I'm writing an email, I never load the contact information. That's the last thing I do before I send out an email, mainly because I've sent a lot of bad emails because I accidentally put the person's name in and accidentally hit send. So I wait now until I finish writing everything before hitting send, before putting the person's email address. So now it's going to draft the email, and then it said, okay, so now the draft is saved. So what we've done so far is updated the Our Understanding slide. We have our follow-up email drafted sitting in our inbox to do final touches before sending out. The last thing that we need to do whenever we wrap up a sales meeting is update our CRM that this meeting did in fact occur, and then upload all notes and a brief description of what was discussed in that meeting description. So the next thing that we can tell Claude is, now that we've had it attached to HubSpot, it's attached to our calendar and Gmail, we can say, I want you to update Saud Rizwan. I'll make sure I'm spelling his name right, on HubSpot or in HubSpot. Log a discovery call, discovery meeting, because I think it's denoted as meetings at HubSpot. Log a discovery meeting and create a summary of the transcript as the notes for the discovery meeting. So what we can do now is, we have the transcript, we'll have Claude create a summary of the transcript, and then we'll have it create a meeting in HubSpot so that we don't have to go in there manually. So Claude is really starting to become our home base. And as a sales rep that's been doing this for almost a decade now, updating the CRM is probably my least favorite activity. And so this is something that is huge for me. So what is this saying? Object type. Oh, there's just the proposed changes. Yes, approved. So it's asking me exactly what to put in there. And then here's the actual object type. So let's have it run through this, and then we'll go into Gmail and HubSpot to see if it actually worked. But yeah, let's give Claude maybe a couple seconds to go through and create this object. All right, so now let's take a look at the record that Claude updated in HubSpot. So let me open this up in HubSpot. So we are in the Saud Rizwan meeting. Okay, and here is what it created. It said, it was completed at this date. And here are the notes that it summarized based on the transcript. So I know this video is probably going to be a bit longer, but what we were able to accomplish in video 3 and video 4 is actually pretty astonishing, because In reality, like when you're like preparing for prospecting, that would take about a half day to do. And we can now do this with multiple sub agents and cover a ton of accounts in a matter of like, 10 to 15 minutes. And then here, what we were able to do is we were actually able to take a meeting and prepare for that meeting using some templates and design systems that we built, prepare for that meeting in about 5 to 10 minutes, have the meeting, and then in about 5 to 10 minutes after that meeting, update the slides based on the meeting transcript, update the CRM, and then we also have let's see if I can pull this up on my end. And then we also have an email sitting in our inbox that is drafted that we could send out to whoever that we just met with. So we were able to just go kind of end to end from prep to meeting follow-up in a matter of like 20 minutes end to end. So this is the power of Claude once we start building some of these automations within Claude and specifically Claude Cowork. All right, guys, so that wraps up video 4 on the mini course, How to Use Claude Cowork for Sales. Now, I've been in tech go-to-market for over 8 years, and this is very near and dear to me because this kind of admin work used to be some of the most mind-numbing parts of the job. We're preparing for sales meetings, going deep into job listings, Googling a bunch of information, looking at 10Ks. Now I can use Claude to just aggregate a ton of that information. And then also sitting in Google Slides and building some of these presentations, I can use Claude Design to take that aggregated information and then create really powerful, really sleek presentations. So I can walk into any discovery call feeling super confident. And then after that discovery call is done and I ask my great questions, I can use Claude to do all the mind-numbing admin work of updating the CRM, drafting the follow-up emails. And then I still do listen to a lot of the recordings because I want to understand if I'm asking good questions. So I still do that. But what I'm not doing is listen to those recordings just to understand what the prospect is saying. Claude is amazing when it comes to really automating a ton of the follow-up work that comes after you have your sales meetings. Now in video 5, what we're going to discuss is how you can use Claude Cowork to actually integrate with your existing marketing campaigns. So a lot of sales teams, what they struggle with is they have their marketing team running events, webinars, and generating a ton of inbound action, but they don't have the ability to be able to generate their own sequences to be able to follow up with those inbound leads or even drive demand to those events. So we'll walk through how you can use Claude Cowork to be able to generate sequences specifically for events, promotions that you might be running. And then once those promotions or events finish, how you can generate sequences to follow up with those leads. So I'll see you guys in video 5 on how to use Claude Cowork to maximize your marketing efforts.